Welcome to Biz Help for You with host Candy Messer. Entrepreneurs like to focus on the big picture, like profitability, success, and a smooth-running organization. But there always seems to be those little things like taxes, employee compensation, laws, regulations, and more. Now you can get the answers you need in one place. Join us today as we break it all down for you. Now, here's your host, Candy Messer.
Hello and welcome to Biz Help for You with Candy Messer. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found the information on last week's show, 3 Easy Steps from Clutter to Cash Flow, informative. If you are unable to join us and would like to listen to the show, links can be found on our YouTube and Facebook pages, as well as multiple favorite podcast platforms. If you'd like to receive notifications on when our podcasts have been uploaded, please like and subscribe. And if there are topics you'd find beneficial or questions you have, please feel free to reach out to me at media@abandp.com. Now let's learn a little bit about our guest today. Deidre Tshien is founder and CEO of Capsho Software that helps entrepreneurs take the difficulty out of content creation. She's also the creator of Viralocity Marketing, author of The Traffic Formula, and host of The Remarkable Entrepreneur and The Remarkable Entrepreneur's Playbook podcast. She's a serial entrepreneur, having founded and led 7 businesses across 5 industries in the last 9 years, and has navigated the entire spectrum of experiences and emotions, the good, the bad, and the ugly, that come with starting, running, and closing businesses. With her hands-on experience in successfully growing her businesses to 6 and 7 figures, she now coaches and works hands-on with entrepreneurs to turn followers into buyers while only spending 2 hours a week on social media. So Deidre, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Candy. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Well, I'm looking forward to this topic. But before we get into questions that I have for you, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about your background and your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, for sure. Gosh. So I started in entrepreneurship almost a decade ago now. I was young, naive, just as a lot of us are, kind of went through my, it's funny, we were always laughing back then about this quarter life crisis that we were all going through. And so I went through that and decided that, corporate wasn't going to be for me. I was in banking at the time. My husband was actually studying medicine, but he was miserable. He hated it. And he found a love of cooking and particularly baking. And we just decided to open our first business it was a dessert bar. It was in hospitality, which is a tough business. Hospitality is a tough business to start in, and we had no background in it whatsoever. So it was one of those like head first, just dive in, did not know what we were doing and had to figure it all out on the way, along the way. So it was tough. And we did eventually, go through the struggles like a lot of entrepreneurs do. And we grew that brand to 5 locations. And then kind of fast forward, that was probably, 4 or 5 years into it. We found out that one of our store managers of our busiest store in the city had been stealing from us. And, we're talking, like a lot of money, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it was kind of one of those moments where obviously I would not wish that upon anyone. And it wasn't great going through it myself, but it almost was the catalyst that we needed to actually rethink where we were, what we were doing, what we wanted to be doing, all of those things. So we I kind of made almost a snap decision because I've always wanted to I love exploring the world and I wanted to live and work overseas. And so I was like, you know what, let's just move to New York. We're just going to do it. I don't know how and where, all of that, but we're just going to do it. And so we made the decision. Funnily enough, at the time, I was actually working on another business idea. It was in fashion technology with another co-founder. Not my husband, this was someone different that I'd met actually in corporate. And we were working on this idea. And when I brought up with her that we'd made this decision to move to the other side of the world, we were trying to talk through how we're going to make it work and, show that we can. And by the end, I was just like, do you just want to come with us? And what better part of the world than New York to explore the intersection of fashion and technology. And so she did. And so I came over to New York City with my husband, my cat, and my co-founder in tow. And so that was, gosh, almost 3 years ago now. And since then, we tested that idea, decided to fail it. We fell into actually agency work for e-commerce business owners. And from there, we decided to, instead of focusing on scaling an agency business, we decided to actually focus on coaching sort of new entrepreneurs start wanting to get into e-commerce. And then from there, with my own struggles and seeing my clients' struggles with social media, the idea for CapShow was born. And we literally launched the MVP of that end of last year, and we've gotten some really great feedback, some really great reception, and literally now we are going all in. We've just brought on a chief technology officer. We've just hired our first full-time developer. It's kind of all guns blazing. So yeah, lots of exciting things happening.
So it's always interesting to hear, where people have kind of come from and where they are now, because it gives some insight into why, they're experts in their fields. And so from what you have learned in your past as well, what would you say are some of the common misconceptions that entrepreneurs have about growing a business?
Oh gosh, where do I start? There's so many. Okay, so if I even talk about my own experience, back then, my naivety about how easy, I put that in inverted commas, easy it is to start and grow a business.
Right.
I think we all do this. So I don't think I'm alone when I say this, but I definitely, my first business, I thought that once I built it, that they would come, right? So that's a very, I think, very common misconception, and we can't help it, because we've fallen in love with our product, our offer, whatever it is that we're offering. We're in love with it, obviously, because otherwise, why would we think, other people want it? So it's totally understandable. But yeah, it's a hard thing to not fall into the trap of either. Even as someone who has had several businesses, sometimes I'm like, I get so excited about an idea, and I'm like, again, I fall into I'm just going to build it and they will come. So it's kind of one of those things where I've had to definitely sort of step back time and time again and just go, okay, how do I slow this down? How do I make intelligent decisions? And that's hopefully what I've gotten a lot better at doing, which is, how do I let the data drive me around making those decisions? So I think that's the thing. It's like, a common misconception is, build and they will come. I think any of us who've been in business long enough knows that that's not the case. And yeah, you've got to rely on data. You've got to use the data to guide you with your decisions.
Right. Well, and I think also too is really poor planning sometimes goes into that, because again, you think, like you say, I'm going to build it, they're going to come, and they think the money's just going to stream in, and they don't plan for the challenges and how expensive it is actually to start a business and things like that too. So I think from my experience in helping people, really look at their numbers and what they need to do, sometimes people have goals that are more lofty than are, realistic. So I agree with you too, in terms of the build it, they will come doesn't really work much of the time.
Yeah.
You have to work hard to get the word out.
Yeah, you do. And it's really interesting that you say that, actually, because I think, unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm not sure, a lot of, marketers and people who own online businesses, they try to make it sound so easy, like starting is like so easy, and they have to, right, in their marketing and things like that, because otherwise, why would you want to buy into whatever it is that they're selling? But that's the other thing too. A really common misconception is just like, no one has become an overnight success. Like, it's just not possible. And, a lot of people who have built their business, for example, off the back of ads when they were doing really well, are kind of now in a little bit of struggle street, because they're just not, ads they're not getting the cost per leads that they were before. So I think that's also another misconception, is kind of like, how do you see through almost the hype of, oh, it's really easy to start and grow and, of a business, see through it enough to know what could work for you and how long that might actually take to work for you, versus thinking that, yeah, okay, cool, I just buy this thing and immediately I'm successful.
Right. Exactly. Well, tell us a little bit more about your company, Viralocity Marketing, and what is it, and what are the services basically, and what could entrepreneurs do to use that, implement it in their business?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because when I came up with the term virality marketing, it was very much centered on content creation. But the more that I was working with clients and coming up with more and more of my own, refining more of my thinking, it's probably it's a little bit more. It's much more than that, actually. So I kind of chunk it down to three main components that make up virality marketing. It's all about data, which I've mentioned, because without the data, you're kind of groping in the dark. Stories as well. It's really, really important that as entrepreneurs, especially ones, a lot of us are operating in saturated markets, and we need to build our own credibility, our own authority. In order to do that, we need to bring our stories to fun. That's the only, I get asked time and time again, well, what can differentiate me from, XYZ competitor? And it's like, well, you're the person that ultimately people are going to be buying into. So you have to lead with your stories. So the second part. And the third part is systems, because, I love this quote from James Clear, but, we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. So it's so incredibly important that we have those three working in tandem whenever we're thinking about our marketing. So that's overall, what virality marketing is. It's kind of an experimental, heart-centered approach to rapidly converting followers into buyers. And then the makeup of that, I call it the virality formula. Pretty simple. It's messaging, content, traffic, and I call it lead attracting conversion events, so LACE. But other people might call it just a conversion event or a launch. I don't know. You can give it. But really, the purpose of that is something that not only attracts your dreamiest buyers, but actually also converts them at the same time. So those four things: messaging, content, traffic, LACE, lead attracting conversion event. Those are the four fundamental components of virality marketing.
Right. And so we were going to talk about a lot today too on the content creation, right? Because that's where a lot of people get stuck and they're not sure what they should even be sharing. So would you coach someone to say, well, really write your own original content? Would you say, maybe if you're not comfortable with what you're going to say, take ideas from someone else, or maybe even share articles from other people? Like, what would you tell somebody if they really want to start sharing information, but they're not sure what to do?
Yeah, so I would generally always start with you as the person, because that's what I always come back to. So there's a few ways that we can do this. So as you're asking a question, I'm like, oh gosh, there's so many paths I could go down. Okay, so let me try to break this down as simply as possible. So yes, I do believe in curating content as well, because that's a very viable, because you want to be useful. Any way you can bring value to your audience is going to be helpful for you and helpful for them. And curating content a lot of times is going to be super valuable. Okay, so that's kind of, so yes, you can start there. Would I say only do that? Of course not, because you also need to have your own voice, right? You also need to have, and you need to start to come up with your own frameworks or ways of thinking that you can start to build your own audience around. And the only way that you can do that is, as I said, through telling your stories, because it's through your stories and through your experiences that you actually create connection with your audience. So how do we do that? And how do we do that in an easy way? So I kind of have a bit of a system that I go through. Now I have a virtual assistant that helps me with this. So the whole purpose is that I only have to spend 2 hours a week on social media activities. But even if you don't have a virtual assistant, this is kind of the process that you can go through to make it really simple for you. So I start with something that I call content hacking, which is I'll find other pages, accounts, etc. that I hypothesize my dreamiest buyers are also following. So that's important, right? Because you want to ensure that you're kind of looking at content that you want to be seeing that your potential buyers are actually following and engaging with. You want to be modeling that. So I find pages and that they're following as well, and I try to find content that they are engaging with. So what's high performing content that's on those pages? And then I use that as inspiration, as starting inspiration for actually more so my creatives. So if I can see, for example, Simon Sinek was, he always does this thing where he shares a quote on, and it's a carousel post, and he does like it's on different colored backgrounds. So we've started using, we've used that as inspiration to, again, our own quotes, our own colors, things like that. But you can see the concept is kind of, it's drawing from that inspiration. So I content hack from a graphic perspective. So if anyone is ever stuck on, I don't know what, image or reel or quote post or whatever to do, content hacking, I always fall back to content hacking. So that's the creative piece. And then on the caption piece, I mean, that's kind of why we came up with this software, Capshow. We knew that we wanted to share our stories. My clients knew that they needed to share their stories, but time and time again, they were like, I get it, Deidre, but I just don't know how. It's hard, it's difficult, I don't know where to start, all those things. So we actually came up with a software that you put your stories into it and it will actually create a bank of captions, so short form captions off the back of it. And so you can just copy and paste it out, put it into onto your post. So that's a really, really simple way. And it gives you prompts. It's basically, another client was saying it's kind of a merging of Mad Libs and journaling. Like so you get all the prompts and all, it makes it super easy for you to just, almost fill in the blanks in a way. And then, at the back of it, you get really, really great quality content that's based on your stories. So that's the caption part of it. And then basically it's really about tracking after that. It's like put things out there and just see what it is that your audience engages with. Your dreamiest audience, by the way, because sometimes we can look at the metrics and be like, oh, this thing went really well, but are they actually the people you want to be,
right,
magnetizing? So that's the other thing that you have to keep an eye on is, are you actually creating content for the sake of creating content to get, the high follower numbers or metrics or whatever, or are you actually creating content that's valuable to your potential buyers? So that's kind of the process that I go through.
Nice. Well, and I think it's so hard for entrepreneurs. I mean, they're wearing so many hats. They have so many things they have to be doing. And yes, putting content out there is important, but they're like, oh, that's just one more thing, I have to do. And then, now what should I be on? Should I be on LinkedIn or Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or, there's so many out there. So what would you tell someone who maybe has been doing this for a bit and is struggling and not really getting a lot of engagement, or maybe they're thinking they need to do something and they haven't figured out yet where they need to be? Like, what would you coach them on how to get started and what they should be doing?
Yeah, so I think this is a really great question, actually, because I've been thinking a lot about this myself, given, more and more everyone is probably hearing that they need to be on TikTok, for example, like TikTok's where it's at. That's, and then you're kind of like hearing, we have TikTok coaches and stuff saying, oh, your audience is on there. Now, so I definitely believe that the starting point has to be, where are your audience, right? And not only where are they, as in like, do they have a page or profile, but where are they actually spending time? Because more and more, like, I think there is a little bit of fatigue around, well, like, I used to love this platform and I'm a little bit over it. So if you can kind of almost tap into, are your audience, like, where, because they're somewhere, right? They're spending their time somewhere. You just have to go find where that place is. There's no point either beating a dead horse if, they're just they're just not active on there. Or there's also no point at the same time trying to chase a shiny object just because, you think you kind of have a little bit of FOMO, right? You kind of fear of missing out on this, So, you have to be really smart. This way it's like, be really intelligent, follow the data comes in. Now, so when I say, so I still lean back on some of the sort of tried and proven platforms like Instagram. And it's just that my strategy has changed slightly. So yeah, you have to put out content. You have to put out good quality content because that's how you build your credibility. That's how you get visible. But how do you be more intentional about, because a lot of times we just kind of put content out there and we sit back and we just assume, or we hope that people are going to find us. And we that they're going to stumble across us. The thing is that the platform will never actually want to, I shouldn't say it that way. They're not there to help you personally, right? Like that's just not what they're there to do. They're there to help people who are helping them. And so that means that if you can kind of tap into what is their strategy and then weave your own work process into that. So what I mean by that is social media, they want you to create good quality content, which is why I'm always such a fan of looking at your engagement metrics, because that's what's going to tell you if you have good quality content. And they also want you to be social. So how do you go out and you actually start being social? And it's hard for a lot of us. I mean, I'm an introvert, so I hate having to be like, oh, I've got to be that person that's like engaging. And unfortunately, if you want to have any success on social media, you're going to have to kind of, put yourself out there. You're going to have to start engaging, you're going to have to start reaching out to people, and use the platform for what it's, kind of almost been designed to do. So that's kind of like, if you're thinking, for me, how I think about something like Instagram or Facebook, kind of like a big, like a blue chip type platform. Now, if we talk about TikTok, like what I would recommend for people is, I get it, like I get the whole FOMO thing. I mean, I am on TikTok as well, but I can afford to be, because I have VAs helping me, like they do a lot of the heavy lifting for me. But if you're on your own and you don't have the time and you're stretched, like there's no point in you trying to learn a new platform and get on there just because the internet is telling you you have to be on there. Because again, it's just all vanity metrics you're after. Again, right? It's like, oh, okay, well, if I can go viral, I can get, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people see my thing. But it's like, again, how good quality are they actually? People are just chasing the vanity metrics and actually chasing, their people, their audience. So I'm not saying don't get on TikTok, by the way. I'm just saying, think, it's because everything's time or money, right? Like if you have more money to get resources and support to help you be on multiple platforms, awesome, you should be, like, for sure. If you don't, and you only have your time, you have to be really, really, like you have to protect your time. And so where is the best use of that time? It's just going to be where your audience is.
So obviously you said you're spending, 2 hours a week on social media because you have virtual assistants. And if somebody is saying, well, I can't, do that right now, it's not in the budget, I have to do it myself. How much time then do you think they should be spending on social media? And how much of that is content creation versus maybe trying to respond or engage to people? Hopefully, they're getting some engagement. That's a whole nother topic, is, how do we get people even to engage? But what would you tell somebody, like how much time really should they be spending on a weekly basis?
Yeah, great question again. So the first thing I would say is, I know that we think that a virtual assistant, I mean, I use offshore virtual assistants and they are very, very cost effective. So I think a lot of people it's actually within budget for a lot more people than they might think. So I definitely explore that path anyway, just to get an idea, a feel, and then you can sort of decide if it is or it's not for you. Okay, but in terms of like, if you were just to do it on your own, you want to really, I always want to like use the least amount of time on content creation as possible. Because as I said, content creation, yes, it's important, but it's not going to be the thing that makes your business. So if you can find a system where, as I said, content hack, have a really learn things like Canva, learn things like, filters, things like that make it just really easy for you to, like, for example, edit an image really quickly and on the fly, put together a graphic really quickly and on the fly. You really want to be spending 20%, less than 20% of your time, your total time that you want to dedicate to social media on content creation. Because you really do want to spend the bulk of it on actually being social, like reaching out to people, engaging with them, having them engage back with you. Like, we found that the engagement on our posts have actually increased dramatically since we've started, I call it engagement growth hacking, which is like being really intentful around engaging before and after we do a post, for example. So, you want to be thinking about how can you actually, use the platform's powers. I'm trying to like the platform powers in a way that can help you in the best way possible. So that's what I'm constantly thinking about. It's like, oh, okay, so they want us to be engaging. They want us to be, how can I actually get myself doing more of these things intentionally? So you want to be thinking about that. And then I do a lot of outreach as well. Like apart from engaging, you want to put yourself, you have to put yourself in front of your potential dreamiest buyers. Otherwise you're just leaving it to chance, right? You're leaving it to hope that they're going to find you somehow. Like, why do that when you can just put yourself out there? It will feel really awkward. It might feel not comfortable, totally. And I'm not saying that it's easy, but once you get into the habit and you start to take yourself out of it, because if you have truly good content, if you truly stand behind your message and you truly stand behind what it is that you do, then you're going to want to shout about it from the rooftops. And that means that you're going to want to actually, get in front of people and be like, hey, I love what you're doing. If you have a sec, come check me out. I mean, not in those words, but that's the kind of the tone. And let's see, where we'd be awesome together. I don't know, in depending on what you do. But so, because that's the thing, more and more, it's let's not leave it to chance. I think that's, the thing that I've just almost been my mantra more and more. When you're trying to grow a business, especially online, you cannot leave these things to chance. You have to put in the work. You call it the hustle. Hustle isn't about time. Hustle is just being smart about where you actually spend that time. And so spend it on things that is actually going to get you in front of your dreamiest buyers.
And I've heard a lot that people should be doing live videos so people can engage with them that way too, rather than just posting a recorded video or a blog or whatever. And sometimes that's hard, or sometimes people are afraid to be in front of the camera live because what if I make a mistake or, something like that. So what would you say to somebody who, again, is thinking they need to be doing certain things on social media? They're not sure exactly what they should be doing. And do they have to go live? Is it okay to just post something, that's not them on video? What would you say?
Yeah. And this is why I always come back to being intentional. Again, going live. Look, if people who are comfortable with that, totally. Right? You want to be leveraging almost all of the features that you can on these platforms. But if you're not comfortable with it, then, how else? Because I guess the purpose of going live is that it helps the platform, kind of try to spread you out a little bit more, try to put you out in front of more people. If you're not comfortable with that, doing that, again, how can you get yourself in front of those people anyway? You know what I mean? So either way, the outcome's the same, right? The outcome is you want to get in front of more people and you want them to see the value that you can provide. So I'm a big advocate for going live, but I also know that it's not easy. And it's, as you said, there's a lot of time, there's a lot of things that go into it. So if you can't do that, then what's the alternative? How else, if the result's the same, the outcome's the same, which is I want to get in front of more people, what else can you do to deliberately get yourself in front of more people if you don't want to do a live, for example? So that's how I always think about it. It's a trade-off.
All right. So if you're terrified to do it, you might not be consistent, right? So it might be better to just do something else that you'll be more consistent at than maybe hit or miss, on maybe I'll do a live and maybe I won't.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
So what about analytics too? You talked, a little bit about that and, making sure that you've got content people are going to engage with and you've got the right people that are engaging. Yes, you have a viral video, but you haven't attracted really your ideal customer. So can you really talk about that and explaining even what the terms mean when they're looking at analytics? Because I know sometimes people look at it and they're like, what's an impression? What's the difference between, organic reach and, different things. So I think that's very confusing for people.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Awesome. So I kind of look at it, there's a lot of metrics that you can be looking at, but I'll try to just stick to the most, the important ones. So I think I mentioned that engagement is, for me, going to be one of the most important ones. The reason why is because engagement is actually an indicator of the quality of your content. And you want to have high quality content because, again, as I said, that's what the social media platforms want. But apart from that, when you have people engage with you on your content, then it tells the platform, tells the algorithm that, hey, I want to see more of this person's post or this person's things, which means that it's kind of a self-fulfilling, cycle in a way. It's like machine, so you want to be always thinking about how can you increase engagement. If we step back from that in terms of like to your point, impression or reach, that's really who the platform is getting you in front of. So it could be either on the explore page, and I'm talking about Instagram right now, but it could be the explore page, it could be on their home feed, so as they're scrolling. So those are all impressions. It could be when they're searching a hashtag, things like that. So that is important to an extent. I advise my clients not to spend a lot of time on this. It's important to know what it is, but I always say don't spend a lot of time on this because it's not really something that you can meaningfully control. I mean, yeah, you could like do tons and tons and tons of research in hours just trying to find the right hashtags, but ultimately, because we've tested this, like I've been looking at our data like week on week, like we are so, structured with how we do this, and using the same, like it's never consistent. Never. You might do really well with a block of hashtags, and then the next day it just like falls off a cliff. And so that's why I'm like, okay, I want to know what those numbers are, but if I can't really control them, like it kind of is what it is, right? Whereas things like engagement, you can have a little bit more control over. Even things like then your number of followers, you can slightly control, you have control over. And that really comes down to, is your bio compelling? Is your content compelling? And are you actually, as I said, putting yourself in front of the right people? And I don't mean relying on the platform to put you in front of the right people, but are you intentionally putting yourself in front of the right people? So that's kind of like, so engagement is the main thing that I would track. Impressions and reach, like interesting, but I wouldn't really, be too cut up about that. And then the number of quality followers. So I think I said followers, but I actually mean quality followers. You want to make sure that the people who are following you are actually your ideal client, because if that's the case, then you can increase the number of quality leads that you're getting in. So that's kind of how I think about the main metrics.
And is engagement considered just someone clicks a like button, or a heart button, or do they need to leave a comment, or like what's considered really engagement?
Yeah, so it is any of the above. I mean, obviously you want them to be leaving a comment, like that's the best, that's kind of like highest fidelity of engagement. But at the same time, even if, they do like it or they save it or they share it, I mean, those are still, signals to the platform that, hey, this person has good content.
Right. I think the key is just trying to get that engagement. Sometimes it feels difficult to really have where people are taking the time. And again, I know it comes back to like content you're sharing and, but do you recommend maybe sometimes just asking questions rather than just posting like, here's, a tip that I want to share? Like, what would you say to kind of drive that engagement that they should be doing?
Yeah, for sure. So this is where, we can talk through almost, okay, so your creative is going to be the thing that stops the scroll. So, we talked about impressions and things like that. When people are on their home feed and, they're scrolling through, you want your creative to stand out enough for them to stop and be like, oh, I wonder what this is about. And then you have the first line of your caption, and that's kind of what we call the hook. If you don't have something compelling there, then they're not going to want to click on them more. They won't care about what you have to say in the rest of it. So, have a great graphic. That's why I always do the content hacking, because it's like, okay, well, someone else has kind of proven that model. I can use that as inspiration for, a hypothesis I have about stopping the scroll with this, and then create a hook, and then tell your story. And then you want to call some kind of call to action. Asking a question is great as long as it's a very low like fidelity question, I would say. So if you're asking someone to bare their soul Like
Right.
that's not, that's very different to drop a heart, or, like, if you agree, so you want to try to make it as low fidelity as possible and keep testing that. Some people actually do have a lot of success asking high fidelity because their audience, their content, it's just much more geared towards that. And that's awesome. So you want to test whether, that's the same for you and your business, or is it going to be more like snappy, like just type yes to affirm, or like, whatever, so, so you always want to be testing.
Perfect. Now that you said testing too, I would love to ask just like one more question. I know we're getting close to the end, but I have also heard before that you can test different things to see what does better. So how would you recommend someone actually do that to see what's going to perform better?
Yeah. So you always want to be thinking about kind of almost what I went through, like those are almost the different variables, right? So you've got your creative, you have your hook, you have your story, and then you have your call to action. And you always only want to be trying to change one variable at a time. So whichever variable you're testing, that's almost kind of what you want to be changing. So if your hypothesis is that people aren't even getting to your story and your call to action because the hook isn't compelling enough, then that's what you want to be testing. Like, can you test different hooks to see, okay, this one is what actually got people engaging more because they actually made it to the end, versus this one that people didn't even want to bother reading more about. It's the same with your graphics. Like, if like test those side by side, I say in inverted commas, but which one is going to stop the scroll more. And that's really great to then look at your impression number if you are doing that test, because that's what's going to tell you is the thing that stops the scroll more. So yes, that's how I think about testing, is like one variable at a time.
Perfect. Well, I know, like I said, we're getting close to the end of the show. So is there anything else you want to share with the listener that maybe I didn't ask, the question that would help them really determine what they need to be doing for their content creation, implementing it on social media, anything like that?
Oh, wow. I mean, I could probably go on forever about this topic. So I don't think we have enough time for that. But, like if you want to reach out to me, I'm super happy to have a further chat about any specific questions that maybe your audience has about their own social media activities. So yeah, super happy to do that.
Okay, perfect. So do you have an offer then that you want to extend to our listeners? Besides just call,
Yeah, just call. Yeah, just speak to me. Well, we are actually doing a free 3-day accelerator. So it's called Get Know and Get Leads Accelerator, and it's actually happening, very soon, which is super cool. And it's you can sign up for that at www.capshowunlocked.com/getleads. So yeah, everyone's welcome to join that. It's free.
Okay, and do you do that like multiple times a year, or is it just like a one-time?
Yeah, no, we'll be doing that multiple times for sure. Yeah. Okay, so every time you go there, you'll be able to get into the next one.
Great. Okay, so how can our listeners connect with you if they want to reach out?
Yeah, so I'm on social media platforms. My full name, Deidre Tshien. That's DEIRDRETSHIEN. And you can also, I do have a website as well. That's www.deidretshien.com. So you can get in touch with me by there, or you can even just see what I'm about and what we do. But yeah, definitely, I'd love for you to reach out.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Deidre, for being a guest on my show and sharing, your expertise in this area. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on.
I do also want to thank the listeners for tuning in. I hope you found this topic interesting and that it answered some questions about how to take the difficulty out of your content creation. If you have any additional questions or comments, be sure to reach out to Deidre at the links that she shared, or you can send us a message at media@abandp.com. Would you please also share our show information with those you know? I'd greatly appreciate your support. I hope you can join us for next week's topic, 8 tips for building confidence in sales. And please remember, you can connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And my website is abandp.com. And you can also find the podcast posted on multiple favorite podcast platforms, including Google, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Until next time, have a great week.
thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next Tuesday. Have a terrific week.